Shane Farnan is with us. He is not only the associate producer for this program, but he's also the Supreme Court reporter with the Talk Radio News service, talkradionews.com. And which of these Twitters should I put out, Shano?
Probably Talking Left, or the one for Talk Radio News.
Okay. All right. Because I've got two here that don't look like either one of those. But okay. Anyhow, Shane Farnan, you are a law school graduate. You know this stuff. You were over at the Supreme Court this morning. We hang out every single day and talk a lot about these kind of things. But today, I just did a rant about how important it is that the president regulate carbon dioxide because Congress isn't going to, because Congress is owned by a bunch of oligarchic billionaires who make their money and have their assets in carbon. They're sitting on billions of dollars worth of gas and natural gas and coal and oil underground, and they make their money with that by refining it and transporting it. And they own Congress, both the House and the Senate. And so you're not going to see a carbon tax any day soon. That the president needs to use the EPA to literally save not just our planet. I mean, the planet will go on without us, as the old George Carlin routine, but to save the human race. And interestingly, this topic was debated before the Supreme Court today, at least in part.
Just this morning, there was actually extended oral arguments for an hour and a half about the EPA and whether or not, the president has gone around now saying he's going to use his phone and his pen. Right. And the EPA has a lot of discretion to regulate carbon. There was a case back in 2007, Massachusetts versus the EPA. And back then, it was the George Bush EPA. And it was a bunch of states that sued the EPA and said, you need to start regulating CO2 and greenhouse gases, et cetera. And the Supreme Court said yes, in a 5-4 decision, said yes, the EPA can regulate greenhouse gas emissions. It listed out 6 of them, among them carbon dioxide.
Now, was this in the face of the Bush administration saying, no, you can't regulate them?
This was the EPA saying we're not going to.
Okay, so the
EPA said, no, we're not going to, and the states like Massachusetts, California, saying you need to.
So the Supreme Court at that time essentially ruled against the conservative ideology of the day during the Bush administration.
Exactly. They said it's time to regulate greenhouse gas.
And has, I don't remember when Elena Kagan or when Justice Sotomayor came onto the court. Is the bench basically identical?
It's interesting. It was a 5-4 decision in 2007. The 4 dissenting justices are still there. Thomas, Alito, Scalia, and Chief Justice Roberts.
So those are the 4 who wanted to say that the EPA cannot regulate carbon dioxide.
Exactly. They are still there. So we're already walking in saying 4 of these justices are going to rule against the EPA in this case. And the EPA now has gone ahead and said, okay, we're going to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. And this case has to do with extending. In the Massachusetts case from 2007, it was the EPA, you should regulate the emissions coming out of cars' tailpipes, essentially, engines, car engines, vehicles, et cetera. Right. Now they've gone ahead, and the one that was the situation that's before the court today was the EPA has said, if you're going to build a new power plant, or you're going to augment a power plant, if you're going to expand any new construction or how you run these new power plants, you need, under the permitting process, you need to get a permit from us, the EPA, and you need to follow certain guidelines in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. Right. They've been challenged by industry leaders, a certain number of states, like led by Texas, saying that this is too much, that EPA has gone too far. They don't have the authority to do this.
Right. When you hear conservatives scream about, job-killing regulations, this is typically what they're screaming about because this hits the Koch brothers in their pocketbook.
And they've been on a jihad against the EPA for a very long time. It's highly political. Yeah. So you already have 4 justices that are probably going to say, yeah, they don't have the authority to do this. Even Chief Justice Roberts, they pointed out that he was in the dissent on that case. So Kennedy was in the majority. Kennedy is still there. The 2 justices that have moved, David Souter and John Paul Stevens. David Souter was replaced by Sotomayor. John Paul Stevens replaced by Elena Kagan. So those votes will not switch either.
Right.
So yet again, it comes back to Justice Kennedy.
Kennedy is the swing vote once more.
Yes, but remember, he was on the side of regulating greenhouse gas emissions. He made a point. He didn't speak a lot today, but he made a very strong point that the Massachusetts case that is still binding, that they must file the rule, and he said the reasoning of that case. This court is bound by that. So I found that as a positive sign.
So was he making that, was he saying basically I was right then and I'm right now, or was he saying that is stare decisis, that is to say, established law, and therefore this court should not mess with it, even though I'm the one who made that law?
He's saying the court should not mess with that. The greenhouse gases are still under the authority of the EPA. We're not going to change that here today, at least not by my vote.
So that seems like it might be good news.
I think it is good news.
Might be another.
If I were to be forced to predict, I
when
would
is
say,
this going to come down?
Oh, you never know.
It'll
when
be in the fall.
It will be before the end of the term, which is the end of June.
Okay.
They never tell you exactly when they're going to bring out a ruling. The only ruling you know are the last day, because they haven't ruled on it yet, and they know so it could come at any time. I would assume it'd probably be somewhat later, in that the 5-4 decisions tend to come later
because there's all this political backfighting going on in the background.
There is. So.
Very, very
Justice Kagan and Justice Sotomayor were strongly in favor of this, giving Justice Kagan called it, this is the apex of deference that should be be given to the EPA. Justice Scalia was still just as strongly against the regulation.
What's the basis of Scalia's objection?
That it goes beyond the text of the statutes, that they're just grabbing too much authority, that they've actually rewritten the law. Because when Congress first enacted the Clean Air Act, it applied to 250 tons per year. And when it comes to
tons of what?
Exactly. Tons of what? Air pollutants, and how that is defined.
Right.
And CO2, they've had to move the number because lots of, a Dunkin' Donuts, as they said in court, can emit that. So the EPA has actually raised that level, and therefore, and some say rewritten it. The Solicitor General said we're in a transition period. Right. So whether do they have the authority to rewrite that law?
Right.
Or
times change. Do we have?
Because Congress in 1977 didn't anticipate greenhouse gas as something that's even a problem. They didn't know about it.
Right. Interesting. Maybe we need new legislation as well as, although
if you can get this Congress to do it.
Yeah, that ain't gonna happen.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 866-987-THOM.
Thank you. That was Shane Farnan. He's the Supreme Court reporter with the Talk Radio News Service and the associate producer of the Thom Hartmann Program. Glad to have you with us, Shane. Thank you.